Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Wendy Mitchell. I'm the events curator for UK Film during Cannes 2020. We're so glad to meet you here online if we can't be together in Cannes. We're doing a series of 4 webinars this week, so please do have a look at those in the Marché schedule. I think we're kicking off with a very exciting one. It's great to have these experts join us, and it's already great to see how many audience members are here listening. I wanted to remind you the chat button is closed for attendees, but the Q&A button is open. So we will try to take some questions throughout, depending on how much time we have. So please feel free to submit your question anytime at the Q&A button. I'd really like to introduce our panel here. We're going to talk across distribution, exhibition, festivals, and even a real-life filmmaker joining us, which is exciting. We're going to talk about connecting with the audiences in this very crazy year, but also maybe we're learning some lessons now that can be used when we get back to normal, whatever normal is going to be. So I'm really glad to welcome our speakers today. We have Mia Bays, who is Director at Large at Bird's Eye View, been doing some great online programming with that and the Reclaim the Frame program. And she's also a producer at Missing in Action Films. We have Jeff Deutchman, EVP of Acquisitions and Production at Neon. Amazing US distributor. We can't wait to hear more. We have David Freyne, that aforementioned actual live filmmaker, the writer-director of Dating Amber. We have Kate Gerova, who looks like she's definitely on the beach. I love it. Kate is marketing and brand director for Curzon. We have maybe staying up a little bit late to join us, Smriti Kiran from the MAMI Mumbai Film Festival, calling in from Mumbai safely, thank you. And last but not least, Nicola Pearcey, who is president of UK and EMEA Strategy and Operations at Lionsgate. So as you all know, Zoom, we've been doing Zoom for months. You know how this works. We're going to talk maybe in turn a little bit first and then come together for hopefully a few questions at the end. But it just gives us a chance to hear from each person and delve into a little bit of their work. I'm going to start with Jeff, please. So, Jeff, welcome. It's been great to see Neon's been doing some cool innovations during this time. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've been doing, especially with something like Spaceship Earth?
Yeah, thanks, Wendy, for having me, first off. It has obviously been a challenging time for, I think, probably any company that relies on the physical world. And that certainly includes theatrical distributors such as ourselves. And, we continue to believe that the theatrical window of some kind is the best strategy for the kinds of films that Neon releases. But that's obviously only possible in a universe where theaters are available and where we feel comfortable sending our audience there. So in a world where that doesn't exist, we've had to be really pragmatic. And, the first thing we did 4 months ago was we had a slate of 3 films that we had acquired out of Sundance. Spaceship Earth was one of them. The other 2, Painter and the Thief and Shirley. And we sat down and had conversations with the filmmakers and the producers of each of those films and really weighed the pros and cons. And I think where we landed was that the idea of waiting an indefinite amount of time, essentially, putting not just our own jobs on hold, but the jobs of everyone in the ecosystem of releasing independent films, from vendors to agencies, as well as the cultivation of the independent film audience, just didn't make sense to us. So we decided to use this time to experiment, to essentially, not let a crisis go to waste, so to speak. And, what we did was we put together a hybrid strategy that included releasing the films on Hulu, transactional VOD platforms, as well as what we now call virtual cinema, which, for those of you who don't know, the concept of virtual cinema is essentially to turn movie theater websites into VOD portals making films available for consumers to rent directly from those websites. And then the theaters, of course, can take a cut of the revenue the way that they normally would, and we get access to their mailing list. And what we did was we took that concept and expanded it to include other small businesses like restaurants, bookstores, museums, to essentially engage with a network of like-minded businesses in the physical world who were hit by the pandemic, who needed help in this time to get through the pandemic, and whose loyal audiences, I think, are typically part of the core demo for neon movies that we could tap into. So we enlisted over 250 partners, and as a result, you know, I think there was a real feeling of community in the release of these films, that we were, in a sense, all in this together. And the last piece of it that we sort of threw into the mix is it was really important for us to maintain a presence in the real world, you know, whether that was through drive-ins or even just something as simple as projecting Spaceship Earth on the side of a building with the filmmaker beneath it doing a Q&A to an audience of precisely no one, but the idea being that, you know, people in neighboring buildings could see that it was happening, would post about it on social, and create the effect of an event not unlike a film festival or a limited theatrical opening, where you're essentially creating a sense to people who are not there that there's something happening that they want to experience even though they can't, a kind of FOMO, which is really what we do in the normal course of business as well.
Wow, some great innovations. But have there been any films that you've thought, you know, no, we're just not going to do this one on VOD? Maybe it's an awards contender or something, and we really just want till cinemas are open and really busy again. Have you done holdbacks on any of those?
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's nothing we're looking forward to more than getting back to the normal course of business. And there are definitely some films on our slate, whether it's because we believe we would be leaving money on the table by not giving them a traditional theatrical release, or because based on what it is, it simply needs to be seen on the big screen in order to be appreciated properly, that we will choose to wait. And, you know, we will release them if and when we become comfortable with the footprint and with sending people to theaters.
Right. And, you know, you mentioned this sort of drive-in, which everybody's buzzing about drive-ins, and I know I'm going to talk to some of the other panelists about that. But do you think drive-ins are kind of a fad right now for understandable reasons, or do you think in 2025 we're still going to be reinvigorated about drive-ins?
I think that something will hold over from this experience. I think that a lot of people have discovered the pleasure of the drive-in who had never experienced it previous. I'm jealous. In New York, you know, I don't have a car, and so I haven't been able to get to a drive-in. But of all of my friends in Los Angeles who have now become loyal drive-in attendees, you know, everyone has reported back great things about it, and I do think that it will become a part of the typical theatrical footprint.
Great. Well, we'll see what happens. Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. And I'm sure we'll have some questions that bring you back into the discussion. I wanted to move on to Nicola, looking at Lionsgate UK. You know, I'm first curious, you know, I think it was the week of lockdown or before lockdown, you had a big film called Military Wives coming out. There was huge hopes that audiences were going to rush out to this film. It's a real crowd-pleasing film. Can you tell us what happened to something like that? You know, how long could you keep it in cinemas, and are you going to in that window?
Yeah, not long, sadly. A film all about collaboration and bringing people together, and it completely collapsed very quickly. It was pretty devastating because it's a film that created a whole new family of people working together. You know, the producers, the director, everyone, all the cast, and then the real military wives themselves, you know, the thousands of them. It was just devastating to have seen that really awesome launch, the premiere with them singing, for it then to just get taken away very, very swiftly, very sadly. But what we did was we obviously took stock, reviewed the situation, and akin to what Jeff was saying, you know, we felt a responsibility to our audiences to be able to deliver something, and that's when we decided, after a great deal of work, both internally and with all the partners, to release as a premium. So it was very clear that whilst our cinemas are shut, that we are bringing this film to you and at your home, so making it available for people to watch in the comfort of their home in a safe environment. And so we went out for 6 weeks with the film as a premium release, and all of the partners supported the film fantastically. There were very few that had been released by that time. I think it was, you know, by the end of March, and our theatrical release was 6th of March. And so then the film was taken off the platforms and will actually be coming back out on the 29th in its traditional home entertainment window. So it's out 29th on EST, and then we'll follow with the DVD release and VOD on the 6th of July. So it's actually, aside from the cinemas not being able to enjoy playing the film for the full duration, otherwise we'll have followed a usual model.
Were the cinemas concerned that, you know, you didn't want to have the traditional window, even though they're not open? But, you know, we can't have that traditional window right now. But, you know, was that a concern with your exhibition friends?
Yeah, I think it's a concern for everyone because it's the uncertainty, isn't it? But I think that the key thing for, you know, for us as a studio is that sense of curiosity, but that sense of desire to bring great content to our audiences, and we felt that we just couldn't sit on our laurels, and therefore we were clear with our communication of what our intentions were with exhibition. And I think they understood, for the most part, they understood the approach, and even if the understanding wasn't there initially, it grew. Because it was with a very clear intention that it was whilst our cinemas are shut. We had spent a fortune, of course, in terms of the P&A, so people knew the film was available as well. So actually, we then extended the advertising to ensure that it you know, people knew then where to go and watch it. But it's about optimizing an environment that is completely unknown, and you have to go out per Jeff and experiment, and at this point it was about breaking down those barriers to enable audiences to still see the film.
Great. And can you also tell us, we were talking about drive-ins with Jeff, Lionsgate's been doing some work with drive-ins. Can you tell us what you've been doing or what's planned this summer?
It's a hot topic of conversation, isn't it? It's very exciting, and it's something that, you know, traditionally hasn't necessarily worked in the UK. However, we feel really positive about it. I think, you know, again, this situation has brought about or advanced opportunities for people because you have created opportunities out of a new world, as it were. So we are, as of today, actually, we have ticket sales launched for a festival with Secret Cinema. It's Goodwood and brought by Häagen-Dazs. And it's a series of drive-ins, which is really cool, launching from the 4th of July. So we'll have films like Knives Out, Hunger Games, Dirty Dancing, Reservoir Dogs playing. So yeah, we're really excited about that.
With cinemas, you know, hopefully reopening soonish here in the UK, you know, are there things you're going to sort of try at the beginning of that with theatrical releases again, or are you going to stick to some premium VOD for some titles, or what's the plan?
I think, you know, we all know and appreciate that cinema brings that love of social connection, and everyone is missing it without a doubt. We cannot wait. We cannot wait for cinemas to be back and running, and for people to be able to enjoy the films on the big screen and enjoy that experience. However, we also want to be able to always test, you know, and challenge and try new opportunities. And it's about, really, for us, it's about the right films being in the right places for the right audience. And it may well be, for example, from the outset that 1 or 2 films maybe shown maximum, we don't know as yet, but based on the social distancing rules, again, an unknown. So we do actually this Friday have another film launching on PVOD, female director, female lead. It's a film called Ride Like a Girl, and it's based on a true story of a girl who essentially is really aspirational. It's triumph over adversity. Lovely sports underdog movie, and we feel that actually that sits really well in the PVOD space, and we're hoping that will do really well for us. So, and then we've got other theatricals which we have penciled dates in, but until we know more, it's hard to kind of firm anything up right now.
Great. Well, we look forward to seeing what happens with all that. Thank you, Nicola, and hopefully we'll come back around with some questions for you. And just to remind the audience, you are welcome to put any question you want in that Q&A button, and we'll answer them as they come in or at the end of it. So we're going to go now to Kate Gerova. Curzon Home Cinema just seems like it's been killing it during the pandemic. Can you tell us a little bit about, the approach you guys have been taking and what you're learning about audiences during this time?
So with Curzon Home Cinema, the approach wasn't, dramatically different to what we've been doing for the last decade. We've really believed in the fact that we wanted to always give our audiences choice about where they could see films. So, but obviously since the pandemic, the big difference has been the number of films that we're now able to screen on Curzon Home Cinema. And the films that have done really well are films with Juliette Binoche in. I would definitely put that out as a thing. You can get Juliette Binoche in your film. So The Truth, Who You Think I Am, both done really well. And in terms of English language, The Assistant, Days of the Bagnard Summer. So I guess we've had a lot of things. So one of the things we've seen is publicity wise. So now if you look at the papers on a Friday in the UK, they're sort of telling you which of the films to watch on a VOD platform. And that has really helped. It's really, what it's able to do, I think, is it's able to give a bit of space to maybe some of the indie films that in a normal week might not have gotten that space review wise. So there's a kind of editorial context to it. And then I think, as Nicola was saying about optimizing the environment, so because you can obviously with theatrical we think they're very creative campaigns, but with digital because it tends to be more transactional, so it's really finding where the audience exists digitally and then making sure they're finding it easy to connect with the film. So that's what you have to do. So you have to sort of spend quite a lot of time on things like Google AdWords, and it's not the sexier side of marketing. There's nothing anti but it just is, there's a you take out some of the kind of creativity of it from having that kind of digital approach.
Yeah, and can you talk, maybe it's just case by case, I guess, but for The Assistant, are you reaching that audience on TikTok and you're reaching Juliette Binoche audience on Instagram, or how are you using social media, or is it a lot of Google ad searches?
So I think that we rely on the distributors to do the, obviously to do the distribution. So they're the ones who go out to that kind of source, really. What TikTok, obviously, Wendy, I'm like ancient, so I barely know what it is. But, but I think Instagram does skew younger and Facebook skews older. So you do see that kind of referral path, but that's very helpful, because then what you can do is you can work with the distributor and see where audiences are coming from, so they can kind of up their spend, for example. So we're trying to be a lot more, I guess, transparent about the whole journey and where the analysis is coming. And then we use our social for essentially campaigning Curzon Home Cinema. So this is where you will find, this is the home of quality film. This is where you'll find films that would be in the cinema if it was, kind of normal, or whatever new normal is going to look like. And we pride ourselves on being a curated platform. So you're coming to find really good content.
It's Curzon Home Cinema. We've all been at home quite a lot. I'm wondering, especially in early lockdown, if you saw audiences spike, or were they freaked out and not watching movies, or are they dropping now that the sun is shining and we can almost leave our houses? You know, what's the numbers been like?
Yeah, the spikes have been like incredible. Like they're kind of those percentages which are like monopoly money percentages, you know, like it's 300 or 400% up on last year. And, you know, so they're really astonishing sort of spikes. Is there a tail off? There is a little bit, I think, as we're coming out of lockdown, and there's the kind of seasonality of it maybe as well. But I also think that with the films themselves, you're looking for hooks. So I think within cinema, people have a much more kind of emotional connection, you know, as the panelists are saying, like a social connection, whereas digital is quite transactional. So people do come out for the right film, but just overall, we're starting to see that slight, you know, kind of audiences, I suppose, dropping off. But still, even now, compared to where we were, you know, a year ago, it's phenomenal.
And speaking more of audience engagement, I'm going to come to Mia Bays because I think what Bird's Eye View does year round is amazing, and the Reclaim the Frame program, and you've just been doing such, you know, relevant talks and programs during the pandemic. And, you know, it feels like more than just clicking on Netflix, obviously. It's a community, it's got an activist spirit to it. So, you know, how have you found running these events during the pandemic, and is it sort of easier to get your audience engaged because they're at home?
Yeah, I mean, there's sort of pluses and minuses, I guess. I mean, you know, we're all talking about having to just like pivot very quickly, you know, to this new space. I mean, you know, we hadn't really been doing so much digitally. We've been really devoted to spotlighting films to our audiences in cinema. So we have spent the last 18 months building a network in 12 cities, and we have partnerships with 15 cinemas. And we were in the middle of touring Misbehavior and lining up several other films, you know, which we were doing theatrical events around, like The Assistant. And, you know, of course, everything happened really quickly. The cinemas closed, and we kind of felt, I think it was kind of like, you know, national, we were all in just shock, weren't we? And it felt like we needed to do something rather than wait. And we had just signed a new deal with the British Film Institute. So we were really lucky. We didn't have to furlough anyone. We've at max capacity. So it felt like those two things kind of added up to needing to be active and to respond and to galvanize audiences in new ways. And so I love the quote from Arundhati Roy talking about the pandemic as a portal. I mean, we certainly felt like it is that, you know, it's taught us loads of new things, new ways to engage audiences. So, you know, we've been really active. We've done filmmaker events weekly and filmmaker conversations or bigger conversations with cultural commentators. And yeah, it's all around the same themes of being cultural activists. That's what we see ourselves as. So we've always been platform agnostic. We've just been theatrically led, but we have always wanted to promote people wherever they see the films. We just want to bring bigger audiences to films that are written by women and directed by women. So it kind of doesn't matter to us where that is. And it's then just about being a kind of active partner for the industry, for cinemas and for distributors, and also being an expert in different audiences. So yeah, this has been kind of, it sounds really awful to say an opportunity and that a lot of learnings have come from it, but it's true, it has.
Yeah, that's great, Mia. I realized I didn't really explain what Reclaim the Frame is, which is usually an in-person screening series to champion and amplify women-led films. Is that okay way to describe it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and we also, I mean, we invest in the releases. So we actually put money up and we don't take money out of the system. So we ask for a small amount of match funding from the distributor, and then it's like we join the team, we join the distribution campaign. Kate's worked with us extensively, so we collaborate with Curzon a lot. You know, we're very flexible. It's small films, studio films, and much smaller releases. It just depends on what takes our fancy. We can't support everything, so we try and do just a few films really well. We supported 28 releases in the past 18 months.
And yeah, you mentioned some silver linings, I guess, which is that engaging an audience digitally who might not live near a cinema where you normally visit or something like that. Are there things that you're doing digitally that you will continue to do once things are physically existing again?
Yeah, I mean, we had always felt that access and inclusion for people with disabilities, people who cannot go to the cinema as regularly because of socioeconomic or literal physical, barriers, that actually we needed to think more about that audience. And so what online does is really serve that audience really well. And so we've been live subtitling all our conversations. So we had a conversation last week with Deborah Granick that goes out live subtitle for deaf and hard of hearing audiences. We're committing to do that really regularly. And I feel really passionately about how important the digital space is for that audience. I mean, the number of people who identify as disabled from our surveys of the last 18 months is like 25% of the audience has some kind of physical or invisible disability. So therefore, that's a really sizable, important audience to welcome into the film space too.
And also, I mean, it's worth saying some of these digital events cost much less than buying a cinema ticket or a train ticket and a babysitter and going to the cinema, and can maybe democratize audiences that way as well, we hope.
Yeah, and I think, we're talking to cinemas about how do we have to physically go to every cinema, when they open up. We're thinking about, there's been a big resistance to kind of Zoom Q&As in my experience in the past. And I think thank God that's going to be a thing of the past. It's crazy that we haven't been doing more of that, because people have been resistant, that said that audiences wouldn't like it unless you have a really big name. And, I think we've now proven that's not true. And, we also can do our bit for the environment. We don't need to be flying filmmakers around the world all the time, actually. We can be much more cost effective, and the audience are now used to it and are not going to grumble about that.
Good points. Thank you, Mia. I'm going to finally come to Smriti, all the way from Mumbai. Festivals are a big piece of our world, and they're all changing this year. This is Cannes. I'm in my dining room. Can you tell us a little bit of Mumbai was one of the festivals that partnered with Tribeca and dozens of other festivals on the big We Are One online festival that was on YouTube. And can you talk a little bit about why you thought that was something good to be involved in, and what the response was like to the films that you programmed there?
Firstly, Wendy, thank you for making me a part of this. It's lovely to be here. Also, I think the last time Cannes will allow this dress code to be, kosher. I don't think I could get into anything if I was wearing this and attending Cannes. But it was fabulous to be part of We Are One. I think Tribeca did an amazing thing by just, they got cancelled. I don't even know what it feels like to get cancelled 2 weeks before you're supposed to hit day one. And they immediately, thought of this. And there were many challenges because I think piracy is a big concern for films, who want to go digital. Then it's not as if everyone, I think it's not because people were being ungenerous, but I think to get to find your way around premiere statuses, to figure whether these films will have a future if they play digitally for even a day or 24 hours or 2 hours, and then get distribution or get digital deals. Those were very difficult things to work around, because as we were programming things, they were getting dropped from festivals that had agreed to play them. But regardless of that, I think it was a huge success. What we decided to do was we took it extremely seriously. We programmed really new films. And also there was a lot of support in Bombay for those films. They got a lot of media attention, PR attention, because we knew that most of the festivals this year are not going to happen, at least in the shape that they are meant to happen. So everybody was looking for new ways to push these films out, because there are lots of people who can't wait for a theatrical release. And what has happened, and I don't know whether that is happening across the board around the world, but there are lots of commercial films that have not released. And there's a lot of money riding on those films. And I don't think India is going to open up as far as theaters are concerned, because our numbers are increasing. We, in all probability, are going to even cross the US in August or September. So we are sitting on a pile of bodies. The situation's not getting any better. So cinemas would be the last ones to open. So most of the streaming platforms are right now trying to cut massive deals with commercial films. And the cinema lobby is fighting those deals because they feel that, you know, these films should wait for cinemas to open up, because the theatrical windows just, you know, right now, cinemas will be the last, you know, the last things to open. Even, I mean, first the plans were to open them in August, but I don't think cinemas are opening at least till October or even December in India. So I think for us, it was very important to make the most of the opportunity that VR1 came with. And the filmmakers are very happy. We were very happy with the response it got. And even though film festivals, I feel, inherently cannot happen without you know, bricks and mortar experience, without it being on ground, because you meet people. I mean, that can't be replicated digitally. But the films that we programmed would not have got the viewership that they got and the response that they got from international media and media back home if it was not happening digitally. And when we also, another thing that we realized was that, you know, we never thought of having a digital arm. You know, we run a year-round program and we never thought of having a digital arm. But now I think even if things open up and we go back to some sort of a arrangement that existed earlier, we would still carry on with a digital, we will still build the digital arm for sure.
Oh, that's great to hear. That's, you know, a learning out of this to maybe reach different audiences. You know, I know it's hard to predict next week, much less November. You know, what are you thinking could be possible? I mean, you just said you don't know if cinemas are closed till December, then I think there's our answer. But if cinemas open in October, could you have a Mumbai Film Festival this year? No.
It's better to shift to next year than to do any part of the festival which is just done for the sake of it. It's not going to benefit anyone.
Okay, smart. I'm sure that was a tough call to make, so.
You know, we've not taken that call officially, but I can safely say that also the thing is, if you hold a festival and it's not safe, you're literally inviting people to come, which is, I don't think it's ethically okay to hold an event that people love so much. And you know, people have been asking us on Twitter, on social media, that will MAMI happen? And everybody wants to get out of their house, and you know, it's a very, very difficult time for everybody. But if we decide to also hold the festival, I think it's not okay to give out that signal, because if the festival happens, I will be at a cinema telling people to come to that cinema. Is that responsible? I mean, that's another question I need to answer.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. It's not all driven by money. There's real people and health concerns here. And as we all know, it's different in every country. You know, I've got friends in Sweden who are in the cinemas. You know, the situation is much different in India right now. So stay safe. Don't do anything crazy. I've seen some questions are coming in, and we'll get to those in a second. But first, I promised you a real live filmmaker. We have David Freyne joining us. He is an Irish filmmaker living in London. His film, it's its second feature, Dating Amber, is available now on Amazon Prime in the UK and Ireland. It is sold by Altitude Films. And I have to say, on a personal note, it is just perfection for lockdown viewing. So I recommend it to everybody. But David, for you as a filmmaker, this probably isn't the situation you envisioned when you were shooting the film. You probably thought, oh, we'll have a big world premiere. We might be at some festivals, or at least we'll be out in the cinema. So how did you shift your thinking to online?
Very quickly. I mean, I think it was, we just finished the film a week before lockdown in terms of post-production, and suddenly everything changed and the landscape changed. And I think I was watching friends having their releases pulled, and we began to feel like the film would just get lost. And, as the previous speakers mentioned, we don't know when cinema is going to open. There's going to be a backlog of massive films to be released. It's going to be even more competitive to get into those big festivals. So Altitude got this incredible offer from Amazon Prime to make it a Prime original in the UK and Ireland. And, we kind of took it at the time as the best solution in the time we're in. But, now it just feels like the best solution ever. It's been, like you said, I think it's just really good timing with people wanting a funny, heartwarming comedy in lockdown and a bit of escape. So it's managed to get a huge amount of viewers. And arguably, my producers and I were just saying, it's probably gotten more viewership now than it ever would have gotten in a small kind of indie release. So it's worked out incredibly well. And it's kind of proven for us, we've always wanted it to be a big, heartwarming comedy, and it's kind of proven to us that it can be if given that platform. So yeah, no, it's been great. I think it was a quick change of plan, but it worked out really, really, really well for us. We're kind of delighted with the response, and we can't open our phones without hundreds of messages, which is insane. So yeah, it's been great for us.
That's fantastic. I mean, I have seen you been very active on social media. And
yeah,
what's it like, instead of having a Q&A with an audience member in a lobby of a cinema?
Yeah.
What's it like communicating with that audience directly on social media? Is there a danger in that? Does that just feel exciting?
It's been weird, because obviously I'm of an age that I love the theatrical experience, and you kind of course you dream of that. But it's been amazing. I think so we did these test screenings, and they were amazing. It was such a joy to be in an audience as people laughed, and you want that experience. But it's actually been really personal, getting all the messages and from mothers and fathers and lots and lots of queer people who've identified with the film. And they're really opening up about their experiences. So actually I felt really connected to the audience in a way I haven't felt before, and that's because of social media. And our stars, Fiona Shea and Lola Pettigrew, are very active and much younger than I am, and they're on Instagram and all that, and they've been flooded with messages and really interacting with the fans that we now have online. So it's actually been an eye-opener to how personal and connected you can become to an audience on social media. And I am a Luddite, so I didn't really understand that before. But it's been really, really lovely. And I think I feel like more connected to an audience through this kind of streaming model than I would have, I think, had it, been released in the cinemas. I mean, that's an unknowable, but I assume.
One thing we haven't touched on so much here, and questions come in about press and critics.
Yeah.
So David, I'd love to talk to you. You can't you could do a virtual junket, I guess, but you can't go sit in a fancy hotel and eat finger sandwiches and meet the press.
Yeah.
And also, a lot of arts journalists aren't that busy right now. New budgets at newspapers and magazines and websites have been spent on covering, politics and this horrible pandemic. So how did you find the press reaction?
It's been great. I mean, it's been overwhelmingly really positive. And I think what's been amazing is because, there hasn't been that much cinematic movement, that I think that we've been able to get a lot of kind of interviews and press and reviews because people have been desperate for content. So yeah, it's been okay. I mean, I've done lots of podcasts and things, and my actors have done a slew of stuff. I think Fiona Shea has just come off Normal People, and he's had a big boost from that. So that brought a lot of interest. And of course, we have the incredible Sharon Horgan, who's a superstar. in my eyes. It's been okay. I've really enjoyed it. I've been, you know, and then lots of social media stuff. Yeah, I mean, I don't really like hotel lobbies anyway, so it's fine for me.
The journalists do. How else are they going to get a free sandwich?
Yeah, sorry. I'll make you a sandwich. No, it's been good. I think we've had a lot of coverage, which has been really nice. And then a lot of really just organic kind of word of mouth online that's made it spread, and like silly amounts of like fan art and things, which is weird. Kids love that stuff, I guess. So yeah, I don't know. It's been eye-opening for us, but it's been surprisingly active in terms of press interest and really nice.
Great,
Yeah.
That's good to hear. I'd like to open it back up to the whole group. And, you know, somebody has asked, you know, very directly, like, what's the role of the film critic right now? And you know, maybe Nicola, Jeff, Kate, Mia, Smriti, whoever wants to jump in, you know, how have you been getting press for your releases during this strange time? And do you see the role of the press evolving and reaching audiences? Anyone?
I'll just say for me, as we've found it really good, just because they've been, particularly a lot of queer journalists have really championed this. But what I hadn't realized before is the power of influencers. Like when you have somebody like Russell T Davis or Dara Breen or Marion Keyes say how much they love your film, that drives a huge amount of audience, more than a critic would. So critics, they've been great, and I think they've really, the ones who've loved it have really championed it for us online and repeatedly tweeted and stuff. So I'm all for them. I'll mute myself.
Yeah, I agree. The critics, yeah, I mean, where we've had a film to release, there has been genuine interest and a lot of interest. And what's been awesome with the films that we've had is the talent engagement as well. And one thing we found, obviously, is we do things that will create a live attachment to something, that it can generate so much noise as well. So, for example, on Military Wives, we Sharon Horgan and Kristen, they were amazing. We onboarded with Gareth Malone and joined the Great British Home Chorus to do a live event with those guys for one of his episodes of that for Military Wives. So it's that traction. Yeah, you're right. Influencers, live events, the critics, that combination just helps drive all of the awareness around whatever we're promoting. It's been really fantastic, actually.
Yeah, we found the same. I think it's given critics an opportunity to, you know, really, they don't always have to go for the biggest release, you know, the one that's on the most screens that week. And so therefore they're able to really, you know, look at what would be sort of smaller independent films and maybe make that film of the week. And I think that's been really nice to see. I've really enjoyed that as a reader, because as a reader, when you look at the press on a Friday, they're all reviewing the same film usually, you know, and that's the way the industry is, I understand. But it's been quite nice to see the sort of, I feel like there's different voices coming through.
Right. Jeff, what about for your releases?
Yeah, I mean, critics are as important as ever, I would say, and there hasn't really been a meaningful difference. The only difference I would say is that, you know, for a certain kind of film, we always have to make the decision about how to screen for press, whether it needs to be in a theater or whether we send links. Oftentimes we end up sending links anyway, and so, you know, that would be an argument for there not being much of a meaningful difference. But occasionally you do have a film that really needs to be seen on the big screen, and that is, you know, one unfortunate difference, I would say, right now, not having that tool.
Yeah. And, you know, I think the other elephant in the room is there's film critics losing their jobs, you know, that might not get them back. So support great film writing wherever you find it. Hopefully they'll come back in full force when there's full force of releases again. We're getting lots of great questions. So there's another anonymous one, somewhat for Curzon, but for everyone, you know, saying that, you know, if we could share more data about audiences in the different windows, that would really help the whole industry. So, you know, this is something we hear all the time, that, you know, we have no idea real data from Netflix, for instance. And everybody is talking about being more collaborative right now and sharing and learning. So do you all share your audience information? And I'm not talking like, you know, email addresses for your customers, but, you know, what about the data? Is there a way to share best practices or to share that data so the whole industry can benefit? Kate?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I don't want to be unfaithful to this webinar, but tomorrow there's another webinar. I know, I'm sorry, with Groovy, and it's at 2:30 UK time, talking exactly about that, about how we share data with distributors, producers, sales agents, for the very reason, of course, there needs to be some more transparency. And so we're doing that a lot more now. You know, we can't, obviously, as you said, like with GDPR, you can't actually share kind of mailing lists, but you can share kind of behavior, and you can, you know, things that might be interesting is how many people came to the platform, how many people went to the page of the film, and then how many people converted to buying that film. Even something like that shows you a shape of what your audience are doing. So I'm all for transparency. Yes, I agree. I think it's a good point.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, the more that streaming wants to be seen as a viable alternative to the theatrical model, I think that they should step up and share in, you know, the way that theatrical box office is reported. I think it is important that we know exactly what we're comparing apples to apples instead of to something completely different.
I think also,
sorry.
No, you go first.
Mia, you go, and then Smriti.
Okay. I mean, I think also, like, what we're finding is, like, where modern films built their own VOD platform, you know, in response to this crisis, because they had to pivot very fast with their release, The Perfect Candidate, and make sure there was a platform for online. And so, you know, the more that there are also other VOD platforms, you know, for streaming, for instance, for rental, we're also building one that we're partnering with Eve from Modern Films to have our own for the release of a film called Clemency, which Neon did in the US. And, you know, where we're being really transparent, and we will share the numbers on that. And that's a virtual theatrical release, which we're splitting 50-50 back end with the cinemas in the premium window. And, you know, I think the more that there are platforms that are owned by distribution and exhibition, the more also will be people are willing to share data. What we're finding is the platforms, not the big ones, but the smaller ones, share numbers with us where we can see our impact. So if we promoted a film, they are saying, yeah, there was a spike, and that's really helpful. We can't share that publicly, but at least the industry is sharing data amongst itself, and that's really helpful for all of us.
Yeah, I would say the most exciting thing that has come out of the virtual cinema experience for us as a distributor is that each transaction comes with an email address. And, you know, one thing we've seen out of this experience, it's sort of a mixed bag, but the good news is that some theaters really do have a powerful relationship with their audience and have been able to generate the kind of revenue that you would see from an opening weekend in that market, but others do not. That is another takeaway. And I think, you know, as a distributor, it's been incredibly useful and powerful for us to now have that direct to consumer relationship that we don't usually have the luxury of. And, you know, I think cultivating that relationship with your audience directly is extremely important. And just seeing the way that certain theaters have that together and some don't, you know, I think that's an important takeaway from the experiment. And our hope is that everyone takes that power really seriously to cultivate the audience so that when theaters come back, you know, they can be even more, you know, it can be an even better model than it already was.
Smriti, did you have something to jump in on?
No, I just wanted to say that I don't know much about numbers, but I do know that there's a new feature that was introduced in India. I don't know if it's a worldwide feature where they, initially it used to say trending, but now they have something that says, the top 10 in India. I don't know what kind of numbers they're sharing with the producers of that content, but it definitely says today this was number 1 in India, this is number 2 in India, this is number 3 in India. So they've got that top 10, grid, which they've also made part of their publicity. So definitely it might be moving towards, more transparency and more number sharing, the way that it happens for theatrical.
Yeah, I mean we can see for Netflix, for instance, yeah, we can see the 1 to 10 in the UK, but yeah, I think we're still not seeing real numbers. But like you said, this is a step towards more transparency. Another question that's come in from an anonymous attendee is just about, cinemas reopening, and obviously this exhibition market is going to also be financially devastated and going through tough times. Do you think is there any worry that they're going to charge more for tickets? And that could make, this industry even less democratic and inclusive, as we've been talking about. Anybody worried or hearing from exhibition that tickets are going to be more expensive?
I think that would be the opposite lesson that should come out of this, is that they're really, if anything, I think to save themselves, theaters need to be sensitive to price resistance, and if anything, consider going in the opposite direction to make things more inclusive. If anything, we saw from the experiment of MoviePass that that really was a meaningful change in consumer behavior. We saw a brand new audience come out of the woodwork during that time period, who clearly had a price resistance, and suddenly, that model didn't make sense. But there's got to be a solution somewhere in between that and current ticket prices.
What we'd like to see, I think, at Curzon, and I agree with Jeff, is people perhaps spreading out their viewing in the week rather than it just being like a kind of Friday, Saturday, especially whilst we still have some kind of social distancing in cinemas, whatever that is. In the UK, we expect that, I think, to change imminently. But so you don't have this so much kind of peak and off peak, and then you won't have to kind of put sort of ticket prices up to sort of try and help the industry, which I haven't heard anybody saying about increasing at all. But I think that's a big education, and can we really change the way people go to the cinema? That's a big issue.
We're running out of time, but there's one really, I think, relevant question probably for a lot of people listening that I wanted to try to squeeze in here at the end. This is from Paul Markel, who is saying, without festivals and sort of word of mouth, how are like really low budget filmmakers going to survive if they can't even afford to pay an influencer, pay a publicist, they don't have a big streaming deal? How can you get your film seen if you don't have some like big budget behind you, some big influencers, some big companies? You're not on Netflix. How can you reach an audience right now?
Wendy, I can only speak for India, but through our year-round program, because we've built that kind of a network, we've started to premiere films on our home theater. We don't have a platform. It's really a really ragtag model, but because we reach out to 600, writers on film and film critics, and there are influencers and filmmakers and industry professionals that are consistently supportive of the festival. The kind of surround sound that's created is huge. So I think we just need to put in extra work if a filmmaker is willing to put their film out there and compromise on a festival run, because that's become a problem for a lot of, filmmakers, because the thing is the festivals are getting cancelled. So you can't really have a festival run, or you wait for next year. So we've kind of done an outreach amongst the filmmakers that have applied to us and said that, listen, in the off chance that we don't happen and you don't go to any other festival, are you happy with the world premiere? And this is what we can provide you. So any kind of support structure, because film festivals are also plugged into the entire network. So if you can, provide that to a filmmaker, I mean, that is what we are trying to do. We are trying to find out who can hold off and who is willing to, go out there in times like these.
Good idea. Anyone else want to talk about how somebody can sort of cut through the noise if they don't have big bucks? Nicola.
Just a quick one, I suppose. From a Lionsgate perspective, locally in the UK, I mean, we've been acquiring titles, films for the various platforms because there is scope and there is a desire for people to see films. So actually, we've been really active in looking for films to be able to release. That certainly hasn't shrunk in any way, shape or form. If anything, we're perhaps more active than we have been. And second to that, we are reaching out, as Smriti said, to more people than ever. I mean, we will be doing more mentoring this year. We'll be doing more outreach, more Q&As to whether it's youngsters trying to get into the business for the first place from a filmmaking or from a distribution perspective. Now is a time to network and just start knocking on virtual doors, as it were, because people will listen, or if they won't, more often than not, they'll help find that next connection. So I think, as in this situation, you just never give up and just keep asking and create those connections, because whilst we can't connect face to face, the social connections are absolutely there for the taking. If you just got to go for it.
Mia, thanks.
What I'm hearing from sales agents on like more like library titles and newer stuff as well, actually, is that if you've got a finished film, you are in a good position because there are massive holes in the production pipelines. So actually, you're at an advantage. You don't. Now is a better time than ever because there's not a surplus as there usually is. There's the pipeline's been disrupted. So actually, you're in a good place to probably sell your film.
Wonderful. Some good positive advice there. We are out of time, and I'm mindful people might be jumping onto other meetings. I just really want to say huge thanks to all our speakers today. Really interesting to hear all your perspectives and all the work you're trying to do to keep things alive. Thank you for that. Thank you for the audience to tune in. I know there's a lot of other sessions out there. And just a quick reminder that UK Film has 3 more webinars this week. Tomorrow morning, we're talking about co-productions. On Wednesday, we're talking about short films being seen in 2020. And Thursday, we're talking about production restarting in the UK. And just if you want to recommend this webinar here, and well, if you're on here, you're probably listening live, but if you missed some of it, in coming days, we're going to be having an archive of the talks at weareukfilm.com. So thank you so much to all of our speakers, to the audience, and to the Marché team for helping us with this today. And everyone have a great Cannes Marché. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye, everyone.